Hello, people. So, there isn't really any specific news stories or people in the news that I am using as a premise for this video, as I sometimes do. A lot of my videos, I will use something that's in the news, something that's happened as a sort of talking point. But this is a little bit more generic, albeit very topical, I think, and relevant. And it is actually about the importance of thinking for ourselves. Now, what I mean by this is, it seems to me that in the culture wars that we're facing on both sides of the Atlantic, um, a big part of that is tribalism. That is to say, if people take a certain position or they, you know, make a certain critique of a movement or an ideology, um, they're often assumed to be of the exact opposite political persuasion. And it's this kind of dichotomy of two extremes or two very different positions, if extremes is maybe a contentious way to put it. Two very different positions. There's just an assumption that if you say A, then you must be against B, and you must be completely against B. So just give some general examples of this. This isn't specific things in the news, but just general examples. If you if you're a man and you criticize third wave feminism, it does not mean that you must therefore be against equal rights for women or against the principle of women's rights. If you criticize the Chinese Communist Party, it doesn't automatically mean that you're anti-China or xenophobic. If you criticize Islam, it doesn't mean that you hate Muslims. If you criticize the tendency for the trans lobby, or at least hardline trans lobby, to deny the definition of a biological woman. If you insist that biology matters, it does not mean that you are dehumanizing trans people. It just means that you believe biology matters. Um, if you criticize Black Lives Matter, it doesn't mean that you are for white supremacy or blind to injustices or racism faced by black people. Those are some examples. I'll give another one. If you criticize Donald Trump, it doesn't mean that you are a liberal who's never Trumper. It doesn't mean that you're unpatriotic as an American. Um, and there's many other examples, right? In the UK context, if you criticize Boris Johnson, it doesn't mean that you must be a Labour socialist. Okay, um, that's the drift of my argument. You can't just assume that because someone takes a certain position, then that is the whole spectrum of their outlook on the world. I've used those examples because, in a way, they kind of refer to my positions. So I am critical of third wave feminism. I am critical of Black Lives Matter. I am critical of Trump. I am critical of the way the trans lobby are bullying women. All those things. But just because I criticize third wave feminism does not mean that some sort of patriarchal caveman who's against women's rights. And I'm sick and tired of certain people associated with these movements having this black and white mentality, whereby you're with us or you're against us. You know, or if you're criticizing the movement, then you're an enemy. So, for example, what I would say to feminists is, just because I don't like the double standards of women getting more lenient sentences than men for committing the same crimes, doesn't mean that I'm saying everything is okay for women. Um, I'm just saying there is double standards there. Um, and just because I insist that biology matters, that it is a significant thing, as Douglas Murray put it. It is an absolutely solid, concrete thing that you can't. It's one of the most verifiable things. In fact, when I'm on that point, because it's not really connected to the video, but I think it's important. There is a bit of a contradiction in the trans community's argument, because they say that sex is a social construct, right? We insist that boys aren't pressured to be boys and girls aren't pressured to be girls, as society sees that, and that you would think, okay, that sounds very reasonable. But then they're actually, so they're saying that sex itself is a social construct, and yet they're absolutely insisting that the trans status is a real thing. There's no social construct with that argument. In other words, you have to accept whatever way a trans person describes himself. That's solid. That can't be touched. That's, don't compromise that. There's no idea of a social construct with that. So there's a fundamental contradiction in that argument. But I must admit, I get pretty frustrated with people who are very dogmatic. And I'm not saying, by the way, that I'm totally. The issue here is not about not having strong views on things. Okay, there's a lot of subjects I have very strong views on. Crime being one of them. I'm pretty conservative when it comes to crime. And if I'm being totally honest, I've probably been guilty of stereotyping people sometimes. I can't hand on heart say that I've never judged anyone unfairly. I probably have. And, I'm trying to do it less. Because no one wants to be misunderstood in their positions. But if you're going to align yourself with a movement, whether it be Black Lives Matter or anything else, um, you can't pressure others into sharing your way of thinking. Otherwise, you will castigate them as being the enemy. Oh, you're not with us, so you must be against us. So, dear feminists, next time a man criticizes feminism, maybe it doesn't mean that he's against some of your basic arguments. Maybe he just is tired of being lectured and man shamed. Has that occurred to you? Maybe when men criticize feminism, they're just absolutely tired of male shaming. That absolutely is a central feature of third wave feminism. There's no question about it. It's verifiable, right? It's not just speculation, that is a verifiable thing. Um, so I'm proud of the fact that I think for myself, but I sometimes it is draining because you feel like, someone is going to take it out of context. Someone is going to interpret it a certain way, and that's fine. you know, um, if it was one or two people, but particularly for public figures, when it's taken out of context, that can really spiral into something beyond all reason. So someone says something that is taken out of context, and then it becomes this person said this, let's denounce them, let's cancel them. And it's insidious. If you really disagree with what they've said, then challenge them, criticize them, but at least be fair. At least look at the whole context of what they said. There's just too much tribalism going on, and I don't think, although I think the left side of things has been far more guilty of the whole woke cancel culture intolerance. I can't say that the right's been totally innocent in this either. If we take Brexit as an example, there was a tendency for some hardline Brexiteers and Leave people to automatically label anyone that even asks questions about Brexit as being a traitor, as somehow being a Europhile who is trying to derail Brexit. Okay, so I've seen that attitude from the right as well. Um, and people need to stop it. They need to just slow down a bit, just step back and just think, well, is their position really as extreme as I think it is? I believe in giving people the benefit of the doubt to an extent. Say to an extent, because sometimes you get examples where people have said something inflammatory and they don't do themselves any favors. I mean, someone, like in the case of that professor at Cambridge, Dr. Priyamvada Gopal, I would have said, okay, well, maybe she's been taken out of context. But I gave that a few days. I thought, okay, well, maybe she's going to make some sort of apology or something. And she never did. She just doubled down. So when people actually become more entrenched in their position, then it's, the gloves are off as far as I'm concerned. If they're going to be that dogmatic in their position, then they have to be prepared to defend it, or justify their defense of it at least. But the culture wars right now are absolutely um raging. They're absolutely raging, and everyone of goodwill, whether you align with the political left or the political right, whether you're a Labour supporter or a Conservative or Democrat or Republican, whether you're a centrist, a moderate, whatever the case may be, um, don't let the tribalists get you down, on right or left. Just stand up for what you believe in and don't be silenced. I certainly won't let anyone silence me. I won't seek confrontation for the sake of it, but I won't be shamed by anyone. Anyone. And I'm prepared to back up anything I say. That's what you have to be able to do, because social media, especially being what it is so easy. I mean, one reason I've always been critical of Twitter, or rather I've been reluctant to use Twitter, is precisely because the word allocation is very limited. I think it's something like they allow, what is it, 20 or 30 words? So I think it's rife for being taken out of context. And I think that's why so often social media controversies, that is, someone has been called out for saying something, very often it's Twitter. I mean, Facebook has plenty of controversies, but when it comes to opinions, that's more often Twitter, I think. Okay, I just hope that's something for people to think about. I'm by no means saying that I am faultless in this regard, but I do try to be consistent. Um, and I think that anyone can be taken out of context. It's not to say that every time there's a controversy, then there isn't a basis for that, but I do think people can be taken out of context. Um, so you just need to look at the situation and see the whole picture. And maybe it is that the whole picture does justify the initial judgment. So, uh, thanks for watching, and I'll try my best to get back to comments.